on my wedding night. I clutched the crimson and silk quilt beneath me with trembling hands. A moment ago, I was staring at the black and white portrait of my husband. Then just before his childhood sweetheart, Bella, pushed me off a high-rise. The next, I was back 20 years in the past on the very night of our wedding. He sat on the edge of the bed, still in his neatly pressed military uniform. The chill radiating from him was enough to freeze me in place. But I knew better. Beneath that uniform lay a burning chest and a heart that once loved me to the brink of madness. In my previous life, I feared him, avoided him, and misunderstood him until it ended in ruin and death. This time, I would tease him, love him, devour him and crush everyone who dared to hurt us into the dust. When you come here, that cold, commanding voice rang in my ears, and I snapped my eyes open. The first thing I saw was the glaring red of the double happiness character on the wall. Beneath me was a brand new, stiff cotton quilt, and the air carried a faint scent of soap and masculine sweat. Wasn't I already dead? Didn't Bella push me off that building? At the bedside stood a man in uniform, frowning down at me. His shoulders were broad, his waist narrow, and his dark eyes sharp as an eagle's seemed to pierce straight through my soul. It was Ethan, my husband of 20 years. The man I had misunderstood for 20 years. In my past life, I believed Bella's lies that Ethan only married me out of gratitude, that the one he truly loved was her. So I feared him, hid from him. Even after his death, I gave all his pension money to Bella, begging her to spare me and our child a way to survive. But in the end, she took every cent, drove my parents to their deaths, and stood before Ethan's portrait to tell me that Ethan had never loved her at all. The letter he'd left me wasn't a divorce agreement, it was a love letter, sealed with every ounce of devotion he had. Lynn. Upton's voice snapped me back. His tone turned colder, clipped with a soldier's command. If you're unwilling, then this marriage. Before he could finish, I shot up from the bed like a cannonball and flung myself into his arms, clutching his strong waist as if my life depended on it. I'm willing. I want to marry you. I want it so much it's killing me. I buried my face in his chest, inhaling the scent that was uniquely his. Tears flooded down my cheeks, soaking the fabric of his uniform. Ethan's body went rigid, hard as stone. He must have thought I'd react the same way as before, crying, begging to be released, saying I'd been forced into this marriage. After all, everyone in the compound mocked me for being a country girl who didn't deserve a man like him, the promising young commander. Even I used to believe it, but now I knew the truth. Gratitude? Force? Lies? All of it. This man had fallen for me the first time he saw me in that mountain village. He'd turned down the daughter of a high-ranking officer just to marry me. Enduring all the pressure and scorn that followed, I clung to him and sobbed like a child, tears of remorse, of sorrow, but most of all, of overwhelming joy at getting him back. Ethan looked utterly at a loss. His hand twitched, as if he meant to push me away, but instead it hovered, then landed stiffly on my back and gave an awkward pat. "Don't cry," he said. His voice was still firm, but if you listened closely, there was a trace of unpracticed gentleness in it. When I finally stopped crying, I looked up at him with swollen, rabbit-red eyes and asked hoarsely, Ethan, do you think I'm being too dramatic?" He didn't reply. His brows drew tighter together, suspicion flickering in his dark gaze, as if trying to figure out what kind of trick I was playing. His lips, though stern, tightly pressed lips, parted slightly, searching for words. In my previous life, this was when he said, "If you're unwilling, I'll take you home tomorrow." My heart pounded. I wouldn't let him say those words again. Before he could speak, I rose on my toes and pressed my trembling lips to his. It was the lightest brush, a dragonfly skimming the water, then gone. The air froze. Ethan's body stiff and even more than before. His eyes widened, like a beast caught off guard, disbelief flooding his expression. His ears flushed, the red creeping from the base up to his temples, until his whole handsome face was painted crimson. So this was the man who'd slain enemies without flinching, turning shy from a single kiss. I almost laughed, but I schooled my face into one of wounded defiance and rasped, "Ethan, Listen to me. I was stupid before foolish and blind. From this day on, I, Lynn, am your wife. In life, I belong to you. In death, I'll be your ghost. If anyone dares to gossip, I'll tear her tongue out myself. Every word I spoke struck him like a hammer to the heart. He stared at me, his expression shifting puzzlement, doubt, and something else I almost missed, the flicker of joy. His Adam's apple bobbed. His voice came out rougher than before. You mean it? Truer than gold. I lifted my chin and met his gaze with blazing certainty. To seal the promise, I raised two fingers like the village girls used to when they swore an oath. If I'm lying, may I never see you again. The moment those words left my lips, Ethan's face changed. He seized my hand with such force it nearly broke my bones. Don't you ever say that again, he barked, his eyes glinting with a fear he probably didn't even understand himself. I did. That vow had struck at his deepest terror. In my past life, he died on a mission we were separated forever. My heart ached. I turned my hand and pressed his scorching palm to my cheek, whispering softly, "Okay. I won't." Then tell me, do you want me or not? I tilted my head up, my eyes glimmering like a kitten waiting for its master's affection. Moonlight spilled through the window, coating his sharp features in a silvery glow. His usually rigid jawline seemed to soften. He was silent for a long time, so long I thought he might push me away again. Crazy girl, he finally muttered, a hint of helpless laughter in his sigh. Then he bent down and pressed a warm, clumsy kiss to my forehead, a kiss that smelled of tobacco, soap, and possessiveness. It was awkward, rough, yet filled with an unshakable claim. When he pulled back, his eyes were dark, turbulent with emotions I couldn't read. Lynn, he asked slowly, each word heavy with suspicion. Who the hell are you? Ethan's gaze was so sharp that it felt as though he could peel off my skin and see straight into my soul, which had been reborn. A jolt of panic surged in my chest, and for a moment, I feared that I had been exposed. But I quickly calmed myself. After all, I had lived through an entire lifetime. My skin was thick enough now. I blinked, deliberately putting on an innocent and wronged expression. Of course. I'm Lynn, your new wife. What? Now that we've just tied the knot, you're going to back out on me? Could it be that you're the scumbag they talk about in the city? The term scumbag was still somewhat trendy in this era. And clearly, Ethan had never heard it before. However, he could tell from my tone that it wasn't a compliment. He furrowed his brow, his ears turning pink with a mix of embarrassment and anger. Nonsense. When have I ever backed out? But just now, you asked me who I was. I protested confidently. Ethan was momentarily speechless. He probably couldn't understand why, before the wedding, I had seemed indifferent. But now, after marriage, I was suddenly so passionate. The sharp contrast made him suspicious. Seeing him flustered, I couldn't help but feel a surge of amusement. This man, the iron-fisted king outside, was now completely stumped by my words. Unable to reply. So adorable. I decided to press my advantage, reaching up to wrap my arms around his neck, winding myself around him like a vine. In the softest voice, I made my boldest move yet. Ethan, one moment of spring night is worth 1,000 gold. Why waste time? How about it? I could feel his body tense the moment my words left my lips. Like a bowstring drawn tight. His Adam's apple bobbed as his breathing deepened. Just as I thought he might take action, there and then, a sudden knock sounded at the door, followed by a sweet voice. A phone. Ethan, are you asleep? My mom made some brown sugar eggs for you and your wife. I'm bringing them over. It was Bella. The warmth in my eyes instantly froze, turning to ice. It was as if fate had heard my thoughts. In my past life, she had done exactly the same thing, knocking on our door on our wedding night, carrying a bowl of brown sugar eggs, doting on Ethan while subtly belittling me. Every word she spoke hinted that I, a country girl, wasn't worthy of him, which only deepened my already fragile insecurities. That night, Ethan had kicked her out, but the thorn she planted had stayed lodged in my heart for 20 years. This time, I wouldn't let her have her way. Athan's brow furrowed so deeply it could squish a fly. And without thinking, he was about to open his mouth to send her away. But I was faster. Placing my hand on his and shaking my head. Then, let out a low sigh. I gave him a sweet smile and, in a voice just loud enough for Bella to hear, said, "Bah. Is that Bella? Thank you so much. We were just about to rest. Ethan, you should open the door quickly. Don't keep the girl waiting outside." I deliberately stressed the words, "we," and "rest," my tone intimate and ambiguous. Ethan glanced at me in surprise, clearly not understanding why I was letting her in. I winked playfully at him, signaling him to relax. Though puzzled, he chose to trust me and stood up to open the door. As soon as the door swung open, Bella walked in gracefully, holding a porcelain bowl. She had clearly made an effort today. Wearing a floral shirt and two neat braids hanging down her chest, her face bore just the right amount of concern. A smile perfectly in place. Ethan daoifnai," she said, not sparing me a glance, and directly handed the bowl to Ethan. "You must be tired after training all day. Drink this while it's still hot to replenish your strength. Sister-in-law, you should have some too. All the women in our compound need to know how to care for their men." Her words sounded as though she was the mistress of the house. In my past life, her words had embarrassed me so much that I wanted to crawl into a hole and disappear. But now, I simply smiled, stepped forward, took the bowl from her hands, and placed it on the table. Then, let out a low sigh. I casually looped my arm through hers. "Bella, you're so considerate. Truly a modern-day hero. Unlike me, having fulfilled by obsession. Clumsy and incapable of doing anything. I'll have to learn from you on how to take care of our Ethan." As I spoke, I made sure to emphasize our Ethan, drawing out the words sweetly. Bella's expression immediately stiffened. Ethan stood to the side, watching our sisterly bond, with an amused look in his eyes. He didn't speak but leaned against the doorframe with his arms crossed, clearly intrigued by my little performance. This man always managed to subtly communicate his stance with such small, unconscious gestures. The habit of tapping his fingers seemed to suggest that he was thoroughly entertained by this show. Bella quickly regained her composure, clasping my hand with a mock-serious look. "Sister-in-law, please don't say that. We're all family here. There's no need for talk about serving anyone. Ethan, his nature is cold, so if you ever feel wronged, don't keep it to yourself. Come to me anytime, and I'll help you talk to him." Her words seemed caring on the surface, but every sentence subtly tried to drive a wedge between Ethan and me, suggesting that he wasn't good to me, all while positioning herself as the wise, supportive older sister. I couldn't help but chuckle inwardly, though on the surface, I appeared deeply moved. "Really? That's wonderful. Bella, you're like a true family member. Actually, I'm feeling a bit insecure. Look at me. I can't do anything. And Ethan is so outstanding. I'm always afraid that I'm not good enough for him. That I'll bring shame to him." As I spoke, I squeezed out a couple of tears, looking the picture of pitiful innocence. Bella's eyes gleamed with satisfaction, and she patted my hand in comfort. "Sister-in-law, don't think that way. Matters of the heart can't be forced. As long as you..." Before she could finish, I suddenly dropped to my knees with a loud pad. "Bella, since you care so much for us, I beg you for one thing." My sudden movement startled not just Bella, but even Ethan, who stood up straighter in shock. "What are you doing? Get up!" Bella cried, her face drained of color as she rushed to help me. But I held onto her hand tightly and refused to get up, crying out, "Bella, I know you and Ethan are childhood sweethearts. You understand him better than anyone. And you know how to take care of him. I'm just so clumsy. I'm afraid I can't care for him properly. So, from now on, please take care of Ethan's daily needs. Don't refuse me, or you'll be looking down on me. Your sister-in-law." My words were out loud, but they were enough for the neighbors in the hallway to hear clearly. Though it sounded like a request, it was actually a trap. In this era, a single Unmarried woman looking after the daily life of a married man? If that's bread, would Bella's reputation survive? Bella's face turned from white to green, then from green to red, an exquisite display of colors. Like a living palette. If she agreed, she would be branded shameless. If she refused, she'd tear off her own mask of virtue and kindness. Sister-in-law. You must be joking. She stammered, awkwardly trying to pull her hand away. I'm not joking. I mean it. I clung to her tightly, crying even harder. If you don't agree, it means you're looking down on your country bumpkin sister-in-law. iPhone. She's despising me. As I wailed, I cast Ethan a pleading look. He was trying so hard not to laugh that his shoulders shook. Then he came over, scooped me up from the floor, and pulled me into his arms. His expression turned serious as he looked at Bella and spoke in a voice so cold it could freeze steel. Comrade Bella, did you understand what my wife just said? From now on, my affairs and my wife's affairs are none of your concern. It's late. Please leave. His arm around me tightened, his grip so firm it felt like he was declaring his sovereignty before the entire world. Bella stood frozen. She looked at us locked in each other's embrace, then met Ethan's icy gaze and finally realized she had kicked an iron wall today. Her face turned ashen. Her lips trembled soundlessly for a long moment before she fled, almost stumbling over herself. Watching her retreating figure, I leaned against Ethan's chest, a victorious smile curling at the corner of my lips. Bella, this is only the beginning. Everything you owed me in my previous life will make you pay back, with interest. Above me, a low chuckle rumbled from Ethan's chest. I looked up, meeting his dark eyes that shimmered with amusement. You et out a loss sigh, he said, tapping my nose affectionately, his voice warm with indulgence. Really are a sharp-tongued little fox. I huffed softly and rubbed my face against his chest. Do you like that? He didn't answer with words. Instead, he lowered his head and gave me a searing, lingering kiss that left no room for doubt. This time, it wasn't a tentative brush, it was a storm, fierce and consuming, as though he wanted to swallow me whole. And I knew, from that very moment, that this man was entirely irrevocably mine. But just as passion surged between us, Ivan suddenly pulled away. His breath came heavy, sweat beading on his forehead, his eyes dark with something like conflict. What's wrong? I asked, bewildered. He took a deep breath, as if bracing himself, and said hoarsely, Lynn, there's something I must tell you. Next month, I'm being sent on a classified mission. It'll last 3 months. Life or death unknown. His words hit me like a bucket of ice water, chilling me from head to toe. A classified mission. 3 months. Life or death unknown. Those words together were like a poison blade, stabbing straight into my heart. Of course this mission. In my previous life, it was the same one. He'd received the order not long after our wedding. At the time, I'd been quarreling with him because of Bella's manipulation, too angry to care that he was leaving on a dangerous assignment. I'd even thought it was better if he went to finally have some peace. When he tried to hold me before he left, I turned away coldly. I would never forget the look in his eyes then, hurt, lonely, and quietly resigned. And he never came back. 3 months later, the army delivered a coffin draped in a national flag. Life or death unknown, the ending had been written from the start. No, I won't let history repeat itself. I won't let you go. I screamed, clutching his arm so hard my nails dug into his skin. Ethan clearly hadn't expected such an outburst. He froze for a moment, and held me tighter, wrapping my trembling body in his strong arms. His voice softened, warm and patient. Lynn, be good. It's an order. I have to obey. I don't care about orders. I pounded weakly against his chest, tears streaming down my face. Ivan, you can't go. You won't come back. If you do, you'll die. The words burst out before I could stop them. The secret of my rebirth laid bare. The air went still. Ethan caught my wrists, his black eye narrowing dangerously. Say that again. How do you know I'll die? My heart lurched. I'd said too much. How could I explain? Tell him I was a ghost from 20 years in the future? He'd think I'd lost my mind. My brain raced, scrambling for an excuse. I had a nightmare. I sobbed harder. Desperate. For days now. Every night I dream of you lying in blood. Not moving. Ethan, Efrai. I'm so scared. I'm terrified. I cried until my whole body shook, gasping for air. The picture of a frightened young wife haunted by bad dreams. The suspicion in Ethan's eyes gradually melted into tenderness. He pulled me close again, tucking my head beneath his chin, pressing gentle kisses into my hair. Silly girl. Dreams are always the opposite of reality. He murmured, voice low and soothing. Don't be afraid. I promise I'll come back to you alive. You have my word. He had said the same words in my past life, but he hadn't kept them. I couldn't stake his life on a promise that fragile. I had to do something. When dawn broke, Ethan was already up for morning drills. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling sleepless. My mind tangled with plans to stop him from going. Feign illness? Impossible. The military had doctors one glance and they'd see through it. Make a scene with his superiors? Even worse. That would be insubordination and would only make things harder for him. What should I do? As I wrestled with my thoughts, the door creaked open. Ethan's mother, Maggie, came in carrying a bowl of millet porridge. She was the typical matriarch of a military compound, stern, rigid, with eyes that always held a hint of judgment. In my past life, she despised me for being a country girl. Thinking I lacked grace and refinement, she'd never missed a chance to make me feel inferior. She had played no small part in driving a wedge between Ethan and me. Get up and eat, she said curtly, setting the bowl on the table with a thud. I looked at her and suddenly, a daring thought flashed through my mind. Maybe Ethan's mother was the key. I obediently got out of bed, took the porridge from her hand, and sipped it slowly. Maggie sat by the bed, examining me with a sharp gaze. After a long pause, she let out a cold snort. Don't think that just because you played a little trick yesterday and drove Bella away, you've secured your place in this house. The Ethan family doesn't recognize cheap tricks like that. Her words offered no mercy at all. In my past life, I would have been terrified and unable to defend myself. But now, I simply set the bowl down, lifted my head, and looked at her seriously. Mom, I know you look down on me, but I'm Ethan's legally wedded wife. The one whose name is on the household register. No one can change that. Maggie seemed taken aback by my direct defiance, freezing for a moment before her expression darkened. What kind of attitude is this? Just entered the door, and now you want to set rules for me? Your mother-in-law? Mom, I'm not setting any rules for you. My voice was calm but carried an undeniable authority. I just want to tell you something. Ethan has a very dangerous mission to go on next month. Maggie's face instantly changed. What did you say? This mission, ice mission. It's a life or death situation. I enunciated every word. Mom, hading fulfilled my obsession. He's your only son. Can you really bear to watch him go to his death? Maggie's lips trembled, and deep fear flashed in her eyes. No matter how strong she was, in the end, she was still a mother. You're lying. How would you know about the army's matters? She argued, but her voice trembled. I'm not lying. I grasped her cold hand and repeated the nightmare story I had told Ethan the night before. Of course. This time, I embellished it, making the dream sound even bloodier and more real. Mom, I know you don't believe in these things, but it's better to be safe than sorry. If something really happens to Ethan, how would you live with yourself? What would you do? I spoke with tears in my eyes, each word striking deep into her heart. Maggie's psychological defenses finally crumbled. She grabbed my hand as if holding on to her last hope. Then, what should we do? Why does he always get these dangerous missions? Mom, the only person who can save Ethan now is you. I pressed on. You're his mother. If you go to plead with his superiors, they'll definitely consider it. Right. I'll go find Maurice. Maggie seemed to snap to attention, jumping up to rush outside. I watched her retreating back, a sense of relief washing over me. I knew this was going to work. When the matriarch of the Ethan family made a scene, even if she couldn't completely stop Ethan, at least she could get him assigned to a less dangerous task. However, I was celebrating too early. That afternoon, Ethan came home with a dark, thunderous expression. As soon as he entered, he slammed the door shut, walking step by step toward me, his eyes burning with fury. "Lynn. Well done." He squeezed the words out through gritted teeth. "Who told you to go get my mom to make a scene at the army?" I shivered from the coldness emanating off him. I didn't. I instinctively tried to deny it. "Didn't?" Ethan sneered, the disappointment in his eyes sharp as a knife, cutting into me. "The whole compound knows about it. My mom ran to Morris's office, crying and shouting, saying you had a nightmare. Then I was dead, and that you wouldn't let me go to the selection." "Lynn, where do you want me to put my face? How am I supposed to hold my head up in front of my comrades?" His questions came one after another, each one a hammer to my chest. I saw his red-rimmed eyes and clenched fists, realizing that I had really pushed him too far. As a soldier, honor and future were everything. And here I was, trying to keep him by making him back out of this vital selection in the most undignified way possible. "I'm sorry." I lowered my head, my voice barely audible. "I don't want to hear your apologies." Ethan slammed his fist down on the table, causing the enamel bowl to jump with a sharp, jarring sound. "I just want to know, why did you do this? Just because of a stupid nightmare? When did you become so unreasonable?" The disappointment and confusion in his eyes hurt more than any slap in the face. Yes, to him, I must have seemed like a crazy woman, creating chaos over a nonsensical dream. But he didn't know that the stupid nightmare was based on something real. A blood-soaked reality. How could I explain that to him? Tears swelled in my eyes, but I held them back, determined not to let them fall. Crying was useless. I took a deep breath, lifted my head, and stared directly into his angry eyes, speaking in a calm tone I had never used before. "Fine, Ethan. I am being unreasonable. I don't want you to go. If you think I'm embarrassing you, then you can divorce me." "You?" Ethan was left speechless, clearly not expecting me to say the word divorce so directly. He was so angry that his chest was heaving, and his hand trembled as he pointed at me. "Fine. Fine." Lynn let out a low sigh. "You've really learned a lot." He laughed bitterly in his fury, turning and striding toward the door. "You want a divorce? Huh? Fine. I'll grant it. I'll go report it right now." The door slammed with a force that shook the entire room. My legs gave out, and I collapsed into the chair. The tears I had been holding back finally fell. I had messed up. I thought I could handle everything. But instead, I had made it worse. The tiny bit of warmth that had started to form between Eve and me had been extinguished by my own hands. What should I do now? Should I really divorce him? No, I won't. I wiped my tears and stood up from the chair. I couldn't just sit and wait for things to get worse. Ethan was angry now, and if I went to find him, he wouldn't listen to me. I needed to come up with a different plan, one that would calm him down and help him understand my intentions. My gaze landed on the enamel bowl he had slammed, and a sudden flash of inspiration struck. Got it. I ran to the kitchen, rummaging through the cabinets to find the last bit of flour and 2 eggs. In this era, these were precious ingredients. Mixing the dough, rolling out the dough, and preparing the filling. Relying on the hazy memories from my previous life, I began making dumplings. In my past life, after Ethan sacrificed himself, I only learned from his comrade that his favorite dish was dumplings filled with pork and cabbage. But I had never known this. We were married for 20 years. And I had never once made them for him. Thinking about it, my heart ached as if pricked by needles. Ethan. This time, wait time. I will make sure you taste the dumplings I made with my own hands. My hands were clumsy, and the dumplings I made were misshapen and ugly. But I didn't care. I wrapped all my regrets and love into each of these imperfect dumplings. As soon as the dumplings hit the water, they floated up, round and plump. I filled a large bowl with them and prepared a small dish of garlic vinegar. Carrying it in my hands, I went to knock on Toby's door, Ethan's comrade. I knew Ethan was angry and wouldn't come home. He would probably be hiding at Toby's place. Toby's wife, Hilda, answered the door. She froze when she saw me. Lynn? What? What are you doing here? News traveled fast in the compound, and by now, everyone probably knew about the big fight at our house. I forced a smile that was more painful than crying. Hilda, I am here to find Ethan. Hilda's face faltered, and she sighed deeply. Lynn, it's not that I don't want to help you, but Ethan's really upset. And he's not listening to anyone. You should go back for now and wait for him to cool down. I'm not leaving, I said stubbornly. Please. Hilda, let me in. I just want to say a few words to him. Then I'll leave. I pushed the bowl of dumplings forward. I just made these pork and cabbage dumplings. If he doesn't eat them, it's such a waste. Hilda looked at my swollen eyes, then at the steaming dumplings, and her heart softened. Sigh. Why are you torturing yourself like this? She sighed again and moved aside. As soon as I stepped into the house, I saw Ethan sitting at the table, drinking in silence. Toby sat nearby, clearly anxious but too scared to intervene. The moment Ethan saw me, his expression darkened. He turned his face away, refusing to look at me, his entire body radiating a stay-away aura. I said nothing, quietly placing the dumplings in front of him and setting down the vinegar dish. What do you want? He finally spoke, his voice as cold as ice. Didn't you say you wanted a divorce? I'll have the papers ready for you tomorrow. I sniffled, ignoring his harsh words, and picked up a dumpling with my chopsticks. I dipped it in vinegar and held it toward his mouth. Just try one, I said softly, my voice barely trembling. See if you like it. Ethan froze, his body stiffening. He stared at the dumpling, then glanced at me, a complex emotion flickering in his eyes. Toby and Hilda, sensing the tension, wisely slipped out of the room and even closed the door behind them. The room was left with just the two of us. I won't eat it. Ethan turned his head away, acting like a petulant child. Just one. Just one. I stubbornly held the chopsticks up, unwilling to lower them. If you don't like it, I won't make them again. We stared at each other for a long time. Eventually, after what felt like forever, Ethan finally gave in. He turned his head and opened his mouth, somewhat roughly eating the dumpling. He chewed slowly, his brow furrowed, as though he were savoring some rare delicacy. I watched him, my heart pounding in my chest. How is it? He didn't answer. Instead, he silently took the chopsticks from my hand, and one by one, ate the entire bowl of dumplings. He even drank the soup completely. After finishing, he set the bowl down, looked up, and locked eyes with me. His gaze was deeper, more intense than I had ever seen. His eyes were red again. Do you know? His voice was hoarse. I felt a jolt of shock. What did he mean by that? Had he discovered my secret? I blinked, feigning calmness, and asked, "No what?" Ethan's eyes bore into me. His normally sharp gaze now filled with complicated emotions: gratitude, pain, and something I couldn't quite decipher. Sadness. He didn't press further. Instead, he reached out with his rough hand and gently cupped my face, his thumb brushing my swollen eyes. Silly girl. He sighed, his voice no longer full of anger, but full of helplessness and tenderness. Don't do things like this again. I knew this bowl of dumplings had explained everything for me. He knew that I cared about him, that I was afraid of losing him, and that was why I had used such a clumsy and intense method to stop him. The icy wall between us melted quietly, without a sound. Are you still angry with me? I asked, my voice tentative. I am, he said, but his actions were gentle, his touch more tender than words could express. I'm angry that you don't take care of yourself, that you made divorce sound so easy. It was just something I said in anger. I quickly defended myself. I know. He pulled me into his arms, hugging me tightly, his chin resting on my head. But don't say it again. Not even one more word. Okay. I buried my face in his broad chest. Nodding vigorously, heading feverishly. Greedily inhaling his familiar scent, it made me feel safe. The storm had finally passed. Ethan didn't withdraw from the selection. But he promised me that it was just a selection process. It didn't mean he would go on the most dangerous mission. He would do his best. But also value his life. I believed him. Life seemed to return to normal. Ethan left early every morning and came home late every night for training. While I began to plan my money-making scheme. I couldn't continue to be just a housewife like I was in my past life. Someone looked down upon by others. I wanted my own career. Something that would give me the confidence to stand side by side with Ethan. More importantly, I wanted to make money. A lot of money. I knew that Ethan's failure on this mission wasn't just because of its inherent dangers. One major reason was outdated equipment. If I could earn enough money and acquire advanced equipment through special channels, could I change his fate? Once that thought took root in my heart, it began to grow wildly. But in this era, as a poor rural woman with no background or capital, how could it be easy to make money? After much contemplation, I decided to start with my old profession, fashion design. In my past life, though I had lived aimlessly, having fulfilled my ancestry, I had learned sewing from an old tailor to help with family expenses. Later, I even worked in a garment factory for a few years. So I had some understanding of design and production. More importantly, I was from 20 years in the future. I knew which styles would become trends in the next few decades. Bell-bottom pants, batwing shirts, leggings. These things that looked outlandish now would be the fashion icons of the future. I decided to start with bell-bottom pants. I immediately got to work. I found a piece of Dacron fabric that I had brought as part of my dowry, something my mother had kept hidden away, meant for making me new clothes. Following the design I remembered, I drew out the pattern, then carefully began to cut and sew. Without a sewing machine, I stitched it all by hand, one stitch at a time. For several days, I locked myself in my room, spending all my time on these pants. Except for meals and sleep, my hands were pricked with countless needle holes, the pain seeping deep, but my heart was filled with hope. One day, as I was working intently in the room, the door suddenly opened. Bella gracefully walked in, followed by several military wives from the compound. "Hey, Lynn. What are you doing?" Bella spoke in that mocking tone of hers. "You've been hiding in here for days. We thought you were sick. Turns out, you're just doing needlework?" A military wife named Rita peeked at the fabric I was holding. Then exaggerated cried out. "Oh my God. What kind of pants are these? Why are the legs so wide? They look like a mop. Can anyone wear these out?" "Exactly. It's so strange." Another wife chimed in. "Lynn, let out. Don't make any clothes like this. The military compound values simplicity. And if you wear this, you'll ruin Ethan's reputation." Bella covered her mouth, pretending to be concerned. "Sis," went out a low sigh. "They're just looking out for you. Ethan's at such a critical time right now. You can't let these things affect him." Their words, all aimed at belittling and putting me down, echoed in my ears. In my previous life, I would have been swayed by their kind advice, giving up all my ideas and hobbies, becoming a docile puppet, living without any vitality. But this time, I wasn't going to back down. I put the needlework aside, looked up, and smiled brightly. "You're all mistaken. These are bell-bottoms. The latest trend in Hong Kong City. It's normal for you not to understand." My words carried an undeniable confidence, leaving them speechless for a long moment. Bella's expression shifted slightly, and she smiled again. "Sis, I know you're young and love to chase after fashion. But these pants are just too ahead of their time. In a small place like this, I doubt anyone would dare to wear them." "Who says no one would dare?" I stood up, grabbed the finished bell-bottoms, and held them up in front of me. "I'll wear them." I changed into the pants right in front of them. The top was a fitted white shirt, and the bottom, high-waisted blue bell-bottoms. The pants hugged my hips perfectly, accentuating my slender waist, while the wide legs swayed gently with my movements. making me appear tall and fashionable. The room fell completely silent. Everyone stood there, wide-eyed, staring at me in shock and even Bella, who had been hoping for my embarrassment, couldn't hide the envy in her eyes. She always considered herself the fashion icon of the compound, but compared to my outfit, her flowery shirt seemed downright outdated. Well? I turned around, smiling at them. Do you think it looks good? No one spoke. I think it looks great. A clear voice suddenly came from the doorway. We turned to look, and saw Ethan leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed, a faint smile playing at the corner of his lips. His deep eyes were filled with open admiration and pride. I didn't know when he had returned or how long he had been standing there, but he walked in with long strides, came straight up to me, and in front of everyone, wrapped his arm around my waist. My wife looks good in anything, he said, his gaze smoldering, nearly melting me. I like it just like this. He paused, then glanced over at Bella and the other military wives, all of whom now had awkward expressions. His voice grew colder. My wife, Lynn, let out a low sigh, can wear whatever she likes and do whatever she wants. It's none of anyone else's business. His words were firm, powerful, and oozing with authority, immediately silencing everyone in the room. Bella's face alternated between red and white, looking absolutely dreadful. She must have never imagined that her well-planned shaming session would turn into a public display of affection for us. Watching her tremble with fury but not daring to retaliate, I couldn't help but feel elated. After they finally slinked out, Ethan released me but kept me firmly tucked under his arm. He lowered his head, leaned in close to my ear, and in a voice only the two of us could hear, teasingly asked, "The pants look good, but the waist is a bit too narrow. I can grab it with one hand." His breath brushed against my ear, warm and tickling, causing me to blush instantly. What was happening to him? Where was the cold, reserved Ethan of the past? No. He kept saying these things that made my heart race and my face turn red. You. What nonsense are you talking? I shyly pushed him away. But he grabbed my hand and kissed it on the lips, a mischievous smile in his eyes. You know my measurements better than anyone, don't you? Boom. My face exploded with heat. Just when I thought I might sink into the ground with embarrassment, he suddenly became serious again. Lynn, could you make another pair of these pants? Huh? I froze. You want to wear them? I pictured Ethan in bell-bottoms and couldn't help but burst out laughing. What are you thinking? He knocked my head lightly. It's for my sister, Allegria. She's coming back next week from the arts troupe to visit, and I want to give her a gift. Allegria. Ethan's sister. My heart skipped a beat. In my past life, my relationship with this sister-in-law was practically hostile. She thought I was too simple, not good enough for her brother, and always ridiculed me whenever we met. But now, an opportunity had arrived. Of course. I immediately agreed. I'll make sure your sister looks stunning. I was going to handle not only my mother-in-law and my husband, but also this most difficult sister-in-law. The day Allegria came back was a Saturday. Ethan and I went to the train station to pick her up. From a distance, I saw a girl with a high ponytail, wearing faded military clothes that couldn't hide her youthful beauty, carrying a large army green bag, walking towards the exit. It was Allegria. Just like in my previous life. The moment she saw me, the warmth in her eyes instantly faded by a third. She simply nodded at me, acknowledging my presence with a restrained greeting. Then, let out a low sigh. She happily linked her arm with Ethan's, and began chattering away. Bro. You're really something. You'd get married without telling me first. I come back, and the whole compound is laughing at me, saying I have a country bumpkin for a sister-in-law. She purposely said it loudly, making sure I could hear. Ethan's brows furrowed immediately. He sternly scolded, Allegria. How are you speaking to your sister-in-law? What did I say wrong? Allegria pouted, looking me up and down with a critical gaze, which eventually landed on the bell-bottom pants I was wearing, her distaste becoming more obvious. Bro. Look at what she's wearing. Such weird clothes. Isn't she embarrassed? I think it looks great. Adam replied firmly, his tone leaving no room for argument. These were made by your sister-in-law. She even made you a pair. As a welcome gift. He handed Allegria a paper bag. She reluctantly took it. Opened it. And when she saw the pair of pink bell-bottom pants, the look on her face shifted. As a member of the performing arts troupe, she couldn't resist fashion and trends. Though she still muttered, who would wear such weird pants? She carefully folded the pants and set them aside. Back home, she continued to protest. But her actions betrayed her words as she immediately ran to her room to change into the pair I'd made for her. When she came out wearing those pink bell-bottoms paired with a white cotton shirt, everyone was stunned. Even Maggie, who had always disapproved of me, was taken aback. Oh my! Allegria looks like a star from a fashion magazine in those pants. Maggie circled around her daughter, unable to stop staring. Allegria beamed, admiring herself in the mirror, her joy impossible to hide. I took the opportunity to step forward, smiling. The real beauty is in Allegria herself. She's stunning, with a great figure. She could look good in anything. Flattery always works. Sure enough, Allegria's expression's off, and when she heard my words, though she didn't exactly warm up to me, at least she didn't act as hostile as before. During dinner, I pulled out all the stops, making a huge spread. Braised pork, sweet and sour fish, candied yams. These were dishes I had learned from Ethan's comrades in my past life, his and Allegria's favorite foods since they were kids. Allegria ate with relish, and her look toward me shifted from disdain to curiosity. After the meal, for the first time, she didn't rush back to her room but actually spoke to me. Hey, where did you buy those pants? I knew I had her hooked. I smiled. I didn't buy them. I made them myself. If you like them, I can make you a few more in different styles. Really? Allegria's eyes lit up instantly. But she quickly became suspicious. What's your angle? What angle could I have? I feigned hurt. You're my sister-in-law. Isn't it natural for me to make you a few cloths? The more I acted selfless, the more skeptical she became. That night, she sneakily came to our room and pulled Ethan aside, whispering, Bro, tell me the truth. Has she tricked you? She keeps giving me clothes, making me food. There's no such thing as a free lunch. It's either a trick or a scam. Ethan was amused by her little adult attitude. He tapped her on the head. What are you thinking? Your sister-in-law is just that kind of person, sharp-tongued but soft-hearted. If she's nice to you, just accept it. I don't believe it. Allegria crossed her arms. Her expression one of complete I figured everything out. She's definitely trying to get in your good graces. Seeing how bright your future is. That's why she's flattering me. Listening from the corner, I almost laughed out loud. This girl was quite the clever one. But, she was half right. I was indeed trying to win her over. But not to get into Ethan's good books. I had bigger plans. Allegria worked in the art troupe, surrounded by stylish, fashionable women who didn't lack money. She was the perfect live advertisement and sales channel for me. The next day, when Allegria was leaving for the army, I packed her luggage and slipped into new shirts I had sewn overnight. One had puffed sleeves, and the other had ruffled edges, both retro styles that were extremely popular in the future. Sister-in-law. You what? You don't have to be so nice to me. Allegria stared at the two gorgeous shirts, a little flustered, her gaze beginning to dodge mine. Silly girl. Don't be so polite with me. I ruffled her hair. When you're out there, you're representing the Ethan family, having fulfilled my IPSA. So you need to look good. We can't let people look down on you. My words were sincere. And Allegria's eyes immediately turned red. She had lost her father when she was young, and her brother was always away in the army. Her mother was strong and strict, and no one had ever spoken to her so gently, with such care. Sister-in-law. She sniffed, finally calling me sister-in-law with real sincerity for the first time. I knew then I had completely won her over. After sending Allegria off, my plan officially began. I used all the money Ethan had given me, 50 yuan, and through a contact, I brought back a batch of high-quality fabric from the south. Then, let out a low sigh. I locked myself in my room and began working around the clock. Bell-bottom pants. Batwing shirts. Dresses. One by one. The future's best sellers were born in my hands. Ethan saw how I stayed up late every night, my eyes heavy with dark circles. And he was concerned. Don't overdo it. He hugged me from behind, taking my hands away from the fabric, forcing me to rest. If you like making clothes, once I make some money, I'll open a clothing factory for you, so you can do it every day. I leaned into his embrace, my heart warm and content. All right. Then you better work hard. Because my dream is going to come true thanks to Ethan, I said with a smile. Yes, my lady, he replied, mimicking a movie line, then kissed me on the cheek. A week later, I received a letter from Allegria. In addition to the usual greetings, there was a remittance slip for 200 yuan, along with a long order form. Sis, and despite, the clothes she made are so beautiful. As soon as I wore them back at the art troupe, all the sisters went crazy. They all want to buy one. Here's the deposit I've collected. Could you make a few more for them? I've listed the styles and sizes at the back. I stared at the long order form and the 200 yuan, a small fortune, and nearly jumped out of my skin. I did it. My first earnings were in hand. 200 yuan in this era, when the average salary was only 30 or 40 yuan, was practically astronomical. I grabbed the remittance slip and rushed to the training ground, eager to share the good news with Ethan. But before I could get close, I saw the training field surrounded by a crowd, and the atmosphere was tense. Almost unnaturally so. My heart sank, a bad feeling crawling up my spine. I pushed my way through the crowd and saw Gordon, the deputy battalion commander who was competing with Ethan for a spot, shouting and pointing his finger at Ethan's nose. A fawn. You despicable coward. You used this underhanded tactic for just one spot. I'm telling you, this is far from over. On the ground between them, there was a stretcher covered by a white cloth, with a faint human shape visible beneath it. Blood was slowly seeping out from under the cloth. My heart dropped to the pit of my stomach. What happened? I grabbed a soldier nearby, desperately asking. The soldier's face was filled with sorrow. Sis. It's Owen. He was doing the obstacle course when the rope suddenly snapped, and he fell from the high wall. He's gone. Owen was one of Ethan's soldiers, only 18. With little dimples when he smiled. The rope snapped? I immediately picked up on the crucial detail. The training equipment in the military was always checked by designated personnel before use. How could the rope just snap like that? A fawn. Don't think I don't know what happened. Gordon continued to roar, his eyes bloodshot like an enraged lion. You were the one responsible for checking the rope the night before. Now something goes wrong, and you dare to say you're not involved? It became clear to me this was an attempt to frame Ethan. Someone had staged this accident, used it to blame him, and ruin his chances in the selection process. What a vile plan. Ethan stood there, his face ashen, his fists clenched so tightly that they were cracking. But he didn't say a word, letting Gordon insult him. I knew his temperament, he would never stoop to defending himself in a situation like this. But I couldn't let him take the fall for something he didn't do. I pushed through the crowd and walked up to him, firmly holding his cold hand. I believe you, I said, looking him in the eye, each word slow and deliberate. Ethan's body stiffened, and he looked at me in surprise. He probably didn't expect that. With everyone accusing him, I would choose to trust him without hesitation. The ice in his eyes seemed to melt just a little. I turned to face Gordon, my voice cold as I spoke. Gordon, one can eat what they want, but they can't say whatever they please. You claim Ethan checked the rope, do you have any evidence? Until the investigation is complete, is it your style to freely assign blame? My voice wasn't loud, but it was firm and resonant, and the noisy crowd instantly fell silent. Gordon was taken aback, then his face flushed with anger. What do you know? You woman. This is none of your business. I am Ethan's wife, and his matters are my matters. I stood my ground, my voice unwavering. I only know that military discipline is strict, and everything must have evidence. Without evidence, Your assumptions and slander are not only an insult to Ethan, but a disrespect to the fallen soldiers. My words caused the soldiers around us to nod in agreement. Gordon's face alternated between red and white, and he was left speechless by my outburst. At that moment, Maurice arrived at the scene. After learning the situation, his face grew serious. This matter will be thoroughly investigated. No one is allowed to speculate until the results are in. Maurice's voice was final. Ethan, Gordon, both of you, to my office now. Ethan followed Maurice. But before he left, he gave me a long, deep look. His gaze carried gratitude, reassurance, and a hint of concern. I knew he was worried about me. The situation was far from simple. This was definitely a planned scheme. And the mastermind behind it all was very likely that furious Gordon. In my past life, after Ethan's death, it was Gordon who took his place and became the battalion commander. The more I thought about it, the colder my heart became. No, I couldn't just sit back and wait. I had to find evidence to prove Ethan's innocence. But how could a woman investigate matters within the army? Then, let out a low sigh. An idea struck me. Bella. Her father was the head of logistics, responsible for the military supplies. If anyone had the opportunity to tamper with the rope without being caught, it would definitely be her father. Moreover, Bella had always been infatuated with Ethan. If Gordon promised her some benefit, she might very well help him frame Ethan. With that thought, I could no longer sit still. I stormed straight to Bella's house. Bella's mother opened the door. Upon seeing me, she immediately became wary. What are you doing here? I'm looking for Bella, I said coldly. She's not here, Mrs. I immediately tried to close the door without thinking. I slammed my hand against the door, my voice carrying a trace of frost. I suggest you let me in. Otherwise, when the investigation team arrives, things won't be so easy to handle. Mrs. Bai's expression changed instantly. I seized the opportunity to push past her and saw Bella sitting in the living room, pale-faced, her eyes panicked, clutching an envelope in her hands. As soon as she saw me, she jumped to her feet, instinctively trying to hide the envelope behind her. Too late. I lunged forward, grabbed the envelope from her hands, and ripped it open. What are you doing? Give it back. Bella screamed and tried to grab it. I pushed her away, tearing open the envelope. Inside, there was a stack of crisp notes and a small slip of paper. The note contained only one line. After it's done, I'll marry you. The signature was a flourishing way. It was Gordon. The evidence was irrefutable. They had no chance of denial. What awaited them was the most severe judgment from a military tribunal. Once the matter was resolved, I dragged my exhausted body back home. As soon as I opened the door, I saw Ethan sitting at the table, waiting for me. On the table was a bowl of hot brown sugar water, still steaming. The moment he saw me, he immediately stood up, walked over, and pulled me tightly into his arms. He didn't say anything, but his trembling body and forceful embrace spoke volumes. It's all over now, I whispered, gently patting his back. Thank you, Lynn. He buried his face in my neck, his voice hoarse beyond recognition. Thank you for believing in me. Silly. I smiled softly. If I don't believe in you, who else could I believe in? We stood there quietly in each other's arms for a long time. Eventually, he loosened his grip and cupped my face, gazing into my eyes with a look of hesitation. Lynn, there's something I don't know if I should tell you. I felt a sudden unease in my chest, seeing the seriousness and turmoil in Ethan's expression. Could it be? Had he taken on another dangerous mission? Go ahead, I said, forcing a light-hearted smile. We're married. What's there that can't be said? Ethan remained silent for a moment, as if searching for the right words. After Gordon and the others were arrested, they confessed everything, he said slowly, his voice deep. The rope that had been tampered with was indeed replaced by Bella's father. But they also revealed something else. He paused, his dark eyes locking onto mine, filled with urgency. Among the comrades who died in the last mission, there was an undercover agent we had planted inside the enemy's ranks. That mission didn't fail by accident, it failed because we have a traitor in our midst. My heart dropped. The comrades who died. That must have been Ethan in my previous life. So he didn't die by accident. He died because of betrayal. This revelation hit me like a bomb, exploding in my mind. I gripped his arm tightly, my nails digging into his skin as I gasped. So they caught the traitor? Ethan shook his head, his expression grave. Not yet. Gordon and Bella were merely pawns. They had no access to the core secrets. All we know is that the traitor, codenamed May, is hiding in our military compound. May. I mulled over the name, mentally running to the faces of everyone in the compound. Who could it be? In my past life, after Ethan's death, who was the biggest beneficiary? Aside from Gordon. Who else? Suddenly, having fulfilled a face flashed through my mind, one that was always adorned with a warm smile. Maurice. Of course. After Ethan died, though Gordon was promoted to regiment commander, it was Maurice who truly held the power. Moreover, he had always looked out for me under the pretext of caring for the widow of a martyr. Looking back, the way he looked at me always had an unsettling, inexplicable quality. Could it be him? The thought sent a chill down my spine. If it was him, then he had hidden it too well. Fine, Ethan. I tightened my grip on his hand, my voice firm. You have to join the selection this time. Ethan looked at me, surprised, but you let out a low sigh. I thought, this is a different time. I interrupted him. Before, I was worried for your safety. But now that I know the truth, I know I must support you. We can't let the heroes die in vain. And we certainly can't let traitors go free. My words ignited a fierce fire in Ethan's eyes. Leno. He was so moved that he stumbled over his words. Don't say anything more. I stood on tiptoe and kissed his lips gently. Go do what you need to do. I'll be here for you. All right. He nodded deeply, his eyes filled with gratitude and love. The days that followed saw Ethan throwing himself into more rigorous training. Meanwhile, I focused on managing my fledgling fashion business while discreetly keeping an eye on Morris's every move. Thanks to Allegria, my live advertisement, my business was thriving. Orders from the arts troupe kept pouring in. And even other military districts were coming to inquire. I made a fortune and, within just a month, became known as the little rich wife in the compound. The women who had once looked down on me and mocked me now greeted me with false politeness, eager to get close to me. Human nature is so realistic. I, too, used these plastic friendships to gather more information out Maurice from their idle gossip. I learned that his wife had been bedridden for years, requiring an expensive imported medication to sustain her life. I learned that his son was a hopeless gambler, deeply in debt. These were his reasons for needing money. And these, I realized, were also his motivations for betrayal. But I had no evidence. I needed a concrete proof to bring him to justice. The opportunity soon presented itself. One day, Morris's wife's condition worsened, and she was rushed to the military hospital for emergency treatment. I immediately set aside my work, made a pot of chicken soup, and, under the pretext of visiting an elder, went to the hospital. In the hospital room, Maurice looked exhausted, sitting beside his wife's bed. When he saw me, he seemed surprised, but he still forced a gentle smile. Lynn, you're so kind. Maurice, how's Auntie doing? I set down the soup and asked with concern. She's the same as before. He sighed, a deep frown on his face. I casually glanced at the medicine bottle on the nightstand. It was the expensive imported medication I had heard about. Maurice, this medicine, it must cost quite a bit every month, right? I asked carefully. Morris's face stiffened for a moment, but he quickly recovered. It's fine. The military provides good benefits, and they cover part of the cost. He was lying. This kind of imported medicine was not covered by the military insurance. On his salary, he could never afford it. I smiled coldly inside but kept my face neutral. Well, as long as she's doing okay. Money is just a material thing. As long as a person is well, That's what matters most. I chatted with him for a few more minutes, then stood to leave. But as I turned to go, I caught a glimpse of him carefully taking something out of his pocket, a small snuff bottle with a painted bird on it. He rubbed it in his hands. His expression filled with reverence and dependence. It was the same bottle. I was certain this snuff bottle was the token he used to contact his superior. My heart raced wildly. I had to find a way to get that snuff bottle. After leaving the hospital, I didn't go home but instead went straight to the post office and sent an urgent telegram to Allegria. Return quickly. Urgent matter. 3 days later. Allegria rushed back, looking exhausted. Sis. What's going on? Why did you rush to call me back? Allegria's face was full of anxiety. I pulled her into the room and closed the door, sharing all my suspicions and plans with her. Allegria listened. Why died? Her face turning pale. Sis. You can't be serious, right? Maurice sighed. How could he be a traitor? I don't have absolute certainty. So I need your help, I said, looking at her earnestly. Allegria, right now, you're the only one who can help me. My plan was simple, but also very risky. I needed Allegria, using her position in the arts troupe, to get close to Maurice and figure out a way to retrieve that snuff bottle. This is too dangerous. Allegria shook her head frantically. What if he finds out? Trust me. And trust yourself. I held her cold hand, giving her an encouraging look. Didn't you always want to be a hero like your brother? Now, the chance is right in front of you. My words stirred up the blood and sense of justice in Allegria's heart. She hesitated for a long time, but eventually, gritting her teeth, she nodded decisively. All right, sis. I'll do it. Our plan, Cottonmouth the Smetch, had a few key steps. The first step was to create an opportunity for Allegria to naturally approach Maurice. The chance came sooner than expected. The military district was holding a joint military-civilian gala, with Maurice as the overall supervisor, and Allegria, as the leading performer in the arts troupe, was naturally the star of the evening. She started going to Maurice's office every day under the pretext of discussing the program for the event. At first, Maurice was polite, but as their interactions grew, the way he looked at Allegria began to change. It became a look a man gives a woman, one of admiration and desire. I knew it, our bait had worked. The second step was to play to his desires. I had Allegria casually drop hints to Maurice that her family was facing financial difficulties and that she was thinking of starting a small business to make some extra money. Sure enough, Maurice was very helpful. He offered to assist her, even hinting that he could use his position to get her access to some scarce goods. Allegria pretended to be deeply grateful, growing even more friendly and admiring toward him. Everything was going according to plan, smoothly and methodically. But Ethan, sharp as ever, sensed something was off. What's going on between you and Allegria? That night, he cornered me against the wall, frowning. Why is she running to Maurice's office every day? We're rehearsing a program, I answered nervously, avoiding his gaze. Rehearsing a program? Ethan sneered, pinching my chin and forcing me to look at him. Do you think I'm an idiot? Lynn, I'm warning you. Don't go too far. Maurice is not someone you can deal with. His tone was unusually stern. I knew he was worried about us. Don't worry. We know our limits. I stood on tiptoe, giving him a reassuring kiss. Trust me. Okay? He looked at me for a long time, then sighed deeply and pulled me into his embrace. Promise me. Be careful. Okay. The final, most critical step of our plan was to get the snuff bottle. The night before the gala, Allegria invited Maurice to the arts troupe's rehearsal room under the guise of a final rehearsal. Only they were in the room. Allegria wore a white dress, looking like an otherworldly fairy under the lights. She poured Maurice a cup of tea, lacing it with a generous dose of sleeping pills. Maurice, unsuspecting, drank it down. Soon after, the drugs took effect, and he slumped over the desk, fast asleep, with trembling hands. Allegria reached into his inner pocket and pulled out the snuff bottle with the painted bird on it. Having obtained the item, she didn't hesitate. Immediately following my instructions and leaving the rehearsal room to the back door. I was already there to meet her. Did you get it? Allegria shoved the snuff bottle into my hand. Her face pale. Her nerves still frayed. I opened the bottle carefully, tipping out its contents. It wasn't tobacco. Inside was a roll of film, carefully coiled into thin strips. We found it. The ironclad proof. I was so excited I almost shouted. Sis, ad infocel went sesh. What do we do now? Go home. And wait. I took Allegria's hand, and we quickly disappeared into the night. The next day, a Nice day. The gala proceeded as scheduled. Maurice sat on the podium like nothing had happened, chatting and laughing. He probably thought he'd just drunk too much the night before and accidentally fell asleep. He never imagined that his incriminating evidence had already fallen into our hands. Halfway through the event, it was Allegria's turn to perform her solo dance. The Red Plum song. The music began, and Allegria, dressed in red, danced on stage like a vision of ethereal beauty. As the dance reached its climax, the giant curtain behind the stage suddenly began to display special footage. It wasn't the prepared background video, but a series of enlarged photographs. The content of the photos were the intel from the film we had developed: military defense maps, critical weapon parameters, and a list of undercover agents. The entire audience gasped in shock. Everyone was stunned. The leaders sitting on the podium stood up in unison, their faces filled with disbelief and anger. Maurice's face, however, turned as white as a sheet in an instant. He knew he had been exposed. He instinctively tried to flee, but it was too late. Security personnel who had been hiding in the shadows rushed forward, pinning him to the ground. Comrade Maurice, you're under arrest. Even as the cold handcuffs locked around his wrists, Maurice still wore an expression of utter disbelief. He probably couldn't fathom how he had been exposed. He certainly never imagined that the frail women he had always dismissed would be the ones to bring him down. The traitor-painted thrush had fallen. The dark clouds hanging over the military district finally dispersed. Allegria and I had made our names with one decisive battle. Though we were the unsung heroes, our deeds spread in small circles. My mother-in-law, Maggie, Helen Fosseld-Laedsai, grabbed my hands, tears streaming down her face. Good girl. You're such a good girl. Our Ethan family owes you an apology. From that day on, she never once gave me the cold shoulder again, treating me like her own daughter. And Ethan, looking at me with a heat and pride I had never seen before, said, "Wife, you truly are my heroine." He picked me up and spun me around the room several times, laughing like a fool. With the crisis averted, my relationship with Ethan had been forged in the fire and became even more unbreakable. My clothing business also kept growing. No longer satisfied with small-scale operations, I used the money I had earned to rent a storefront in the city and opened my own clothing shop, naming it Evening Breeze. On the opening day, Ethan took a leave of absence and came to help me with the ribbon-cutting ceremony. Dressed in his sharp military uniform, he stood proudly in front of my little shop, looking more proud and confident than I was. "Darling, congratulations," he whispered as he held my hand, his voice low and full of affection. "From now on, you take care of being beautiful, and I'll take care of earning money and supporting the family. And protecting the family." "Gordon," I playfully punched him. "You're such a sweet talker." Looking at the man I had loved across 2 lifetimes, seeing the beautiful life we had built together with our own hands, my eyes grew misty. It was all so perfect. Living this life again. It felt so good. Not only had I changed my fate, but I had also changed his. Finally, had in fulfilled wired, we could live free from conspiracies and betrayal and embrace a simple, happy life. But I had celebrated too soon. Just as everything seemed to be falling into place, an unexpected figure appeared in front of me. It was Bella. Wasn't she supposed to be in prison? How was she out? She looked at me with a strange smile on her face, her eyes filled with resentment and madness. "Lynn, If I can't live well, you won't get to either. She sneered. The moment I saw Bella, my blood ran cold. How could she be here? Wasn't she sentenced to a long prison term for leaking military secrets and indirectly causing deaths? She was wearing tattered clothes. Her hair a dry yellow. And her face gaunt. She no longer looked like the delicate girl she once was. But those eyes, they were like poison daggers, staring at me with unmasked hatred. How did you get out? I instinctively took a step back, watching her warily. How did I get out? Bella laughed manically, her voice sharp and grating. Of course. Someone bailed me out. Lynn. You didn't expect this. Did you? You sent me to hell. But someone still pulled me out. My heart sank. The person who could bail her out of a military prison had to have some serious connections. What do you want from me? I asked coldly. What do I want? Bella took slow, deliberate steps toward me, her smile growing more sinister. You ruined my life, destroyed my family, and ruined my reputation. What do I want? I want you to die. Before I could react, she suddenly pulled a gleaming knife from behind her and lunged at me. Crazed. Die. She screamed. My pupils contracted. And I had no time to dodge. In that instant, a shadow flashed past me, swiftly pulling me behind it. It was Ethan. Thud. The sound of the knife plunging into flesh was unmistakable. Blood instantly soaked through his military uniform at his chest. Ethan! I screamed in agony, feeling as though the world was spinning around me. Why? After I was given a second chance at life, couldn't I change his fate? Quick, couldn't fulfill my obsession. Call an ambulance. I stammered, trembling uncontrollably. But Ethan held my hand, his face contorted into a pale smile, trying to comfort me. Don't worry. I'm fine. Just a flesh wound. Before he could finish his sentence, he collapsed, unable to support himself any longer. No. In the hospital, the lights in the operating room stayed on all night. I leaned against the cold wall, trembling uncontrollably. In my previous life, I had seen him for the last time in the morgue. Was I really going to watch him leave me again this time? No, I couldn't accept it. As the first light of dawn broke, the lights in the operating room finally went out. The doctor came out, removing his mask, his face exhausted. He said, "The patient is no longer in critical danger." The knife wound was only 1 centimeter from his heart. If it had been even slightly off, not even a miracle would have saved him. You can see him now. My legs gave way, and I almost collapsed to the ground. I rushed into the room and saw Ethan lying on the bed, his face pale as paper, but breathing steadily. Tears flowed freely from my eyes. He was alive. He was still alive. Thank goodness. Later, I learned that Bella had been bailed out because she had traded a secret in exchange for the opportunity to make up for her crimes. That secret was about May's superior, a deeper hidden figure codenamed the Boss. While in prison, Bella overheard this codename and used it as leverage to secure her release. Upon her release, her first action was to come after me for revenge. But she hadn't expected this to be the outcome. She was arrested again. And this time, facing multiple charges. She would face the most severe punishment under the law. And the Boss was captured soon after, bringing down the entire network. The dark cloud hanging over us was finally lifted. Ethan's wound took 3 months to heal. For those 3 months, adding fulfilled my answer. I stayed by his side, never leaving. I bathed him, fed him, and kept him company. Our bond, tested through life and death, had grown far beyond love. It was now a deep familial affection, woven into the fabric of our very beings. The day he was discharged from the hospital, the sun was bright and warm. He wore the new clothes I had bought for him, standing tall in the sunlight. The scar on his chest had become the badge of honor for the life he had risked for me. Darling. He took my hand, kissing it softly. Let's go home. Okay. I smiled and nodded. On the way home, he suddenly spoke up. Lynn, let out a low sigh. Once I've fully recovered, let's have another wedding. I froze for a moment. I want everyone to know that you are my wife. Ethan's lawful wife. I'm going to give you the grandest wedding the entire military district has ever seen. His gaze was serious and intense. My eyes welled up again. This man always loves me in the CLU street yet most sincere way. A year later, our daughter was born. We named her Stella. Ethan held the tiny, soft baby in his arms, smiling like a 200-pound child. He fumbled awkwardly as he changed her diaper, singing a lullaby that was completely out of tune. The tenderness in his eyes was so overwhelming it almost spilled over. Watching this heartwarming scene, I leaned against the doorframe, smiling with utter contentment. In my previous life, I lost everything. In this life, I had the whole world. Thank you, Ethan. Thank you for loving me for 2 lifetimes. From now on, let me protect you and our home. The day of the earthquake this time, I did not, as I had in my last life, crawl into the rubble to dig out Dorian's corpse. I simply stood by and watched as the crushed body was mangled beyond recognition beneath the broken stones. In my last life, when Yun City trembled, Dorian's twin elder brother had been trapped under the ruins. Dorian, colluding with my mother-in-law, faked a death and took his brother's identity only because he couldn't bear the thought of his frail sister-in-law living as a widow. Pitiful me, overwhelmed with grief then, couldn't tell that the body under the stones wasn't my husband at all. Ignoring the danger of aftershocks, I fought to pull my husband's bones out. In the end, a slab of rock crushed my legs. The wounds became infected, and I died. Even my daughter, not yet 4, followed me looking for her father and fell into a chasm opened by the quake. All the while my husband watched. In the end, wearing his brother's identity, he inherited everything I had and handed it over to the delicate sister-in-law. This time, I went back to the day of the earthquake. Serafina, get out. The aftershocks are coming. A neighbor from next door grabbed me and tried to drag me outside. But in the next moment my face smudged with dust. My mother-in-law, her face creased, blocked me. She slapped me hard and wept until her eyes were red. You jinx. My son is still in there. How could you come out alone? She cried. He's your husband, he went in for you. No matter what. You must find his body. The living must see him alive. The dead must be seen. It was those very words that had driven me last time to rush forward without thinking. But the person inside was Silas, the twin elder brother of Dorian. Silas had charged in to save his own wife, Leela. But Leela had already been carried out by Dorian beforehand. The building teetered, ready to collapse in 10 minutes. My mother-in-law and Dorian wanted me to die in that quake. Because everyone's faces were coated with dust, Dorian slipped in with Leela, feigning concern as he stood in front of my mother-in-law, his voice catching. Mother, perhaps my brother has already met with misfortune. It's so dangerous in there. My brother loved his sister-in-law so much that he would risk his life. He surely wouldn't want her to risk hers. Last life. I hadn't even waited for him to finish. My mother-in-law's words were what pushed me over the edge and I charged in. This time, I stood frozen, unmoved, and only then could Dorian not hold back and stepped forward. The other survivors nodded in agreement. Yes. It's so dangerous. Serafina is just a young girl. Even if she went in, she couldn't help. If anything happens, there's no going back. Better to wait for the professional rescue teams. Auntie from the neighborhood, scared I'd risk myself, tugged my arm and pleaded, even if you don't think of yourself, think of your daughter. Her father is gone already. She can't be without you too. Dorian's face tightened. A flicker of annoyance crossed his eyes. Of course he didn't mean it the way they Thilda was trying to stir up my guilt and love to push me into the wreckage. Last life I lost my head and rushed into the crumbling building without a second thought. No one's pulling could hold me back. My little girl slipped in behind me when nobody was watching. I was crushed, my legs shattered by the falling stones. And I watched my child tumble into a nearby fissure. Thinking of that, a hot, fierce hatred ignited inside me. My daughter could have been safe. My mother-in-law had intentionally let go of her hand so she would come looking for me. They despised my child as a burden and coveted the fortune my parents left behind so they could inherit it openly. I survived by sheer luck. I wasn't buried in the quake, but stones had smashed my legs and I was forced to have them amputated. While Icon Vale said, my mother-in-law brainwashed me constantly, my husband and daughter had died because of me. I sank into depression. They even switched my medication without my knowledge. My wounds became infected. And only when I was on the brink of death did I overhear my mother-in-law and Dorian talking. Dorian, you must take good care of the child in Leela's belly. That little burden is dead. And that bitch will be gone soon too. After that, all of Serafina's family fortune will be ours. Don't worry. Mom. You know I've always liked Leela. If it weren't for Serafina's family fortune, I would never have married Serafina. Even though Leela's child is really my brother's. My brother and I are real brothers. I'll raise the child as my own. So the man I loved married me only for my inheritance. He didn't love me, he shamelessly fell for his sister-in-law. To openly inherit my family's wealth. They could even stand by while their own daughter and granddaughter died. If that's how they play, then I would return in kind an eye for an eye. Chapter 2. No. My son is still in there. Without a body he can't be reborn. My mother-in-law flopped down and slapped her thighs, wailing at the top of her lungs. Between her sobs she furtively watched my expression. Beside her, the sister-in-law Leela's eyes flashed. She turned red and clung to Dorian. Sister-in-law, Dorian is your husband. If the man inside were my husband, I'd rather die with him than live without him. At Leela's words Dorian squeezed her hand. Touched. I watched them coldly. Last life it was Leela who egged on my mother-in-law, pushing my daughter to come find me. She couldn't escape it either. I exhaled softly, tightened my grip on my daughter's small hand, and gazed at the building. Tears slipped down my face. Husband, don't leave me, I shouted, and turned to run toward the building with my daughter. My mother-in-law and Dorian watched me, hope written on their faces. In the next instant their expressions dropped as dark as night, overcome with grief. I fainted to the ground. The people around watched me with pity. How tragic. So young to be a widow. At that moment the rescuers arrived, and a kind neighbor urged they strap me to a stretcher. The very moment I was being lifted onto it. With a thunderous roar the building collapsed into a heap of rubble. Dust filled the air. I thought I could still hear people around me breathing. Grateful to be alive. Good thing they didn't go in. If they had, they'd have died inside. I don't know what that mother-in-law was thinking, forcing her daughter-in-law to die when her son was gone. What kind of morals are those? Maybe they did it on purpose to grab Serafina's fortune. I heard the Serafina family left her a lot of money. Every whispered word stuck exactly at Dorian and my mother-in-law's hidden motive. Their faces flushed, then paled, utterly unsightly. After the building fell, their protests sounded hollow and weak. Once we reached a safe place, I clutched my daughter to my chest and drank in the joy of having her back. She was small, but she understood our loss. I held her and soothed her softly. And she choked out a question. Why doesn't Daddy let me call him Daddy? Hearing my daughter's innocent voice. My heart chilled. Dorian's acting was so crude even a child could see through it. I wiped away my tears and told my daughter solemnly. Be good, sweetheart. Daddy's never coming back. The Dorian family lived in my house. Used the property my parents left me. That catastrophic earthquake had taken away far too much. So when Dorian and his mother showed up with Leela, I wasn't surprised. After all, I still had a fortune and they had nothing. What I didn't expect was for them to come find me before I'd even left the safety zone. My eyes were red and swollen. Everything that had happened in such a short time had exhausted me to the point of collapse. The chaos of grief and shock made me look on the verge of a breakdown. And everyone thought I was devastated because my husband had died. Dorian brought his mother to stand before me. Sister-in-law, he said. My brother's gone now. And it's not easy for you to raise a child alone. Mother will stay with me from now on. My mother-in-law gave a cold snort and looked at me askance. All of my son's property goes with us, she said sharply. You're just a woman and ragging around a little bird, and Aunt didn't think about taking a cent of my son's money. I took a deep breath, a cold smile tugging at my lips. Dorian's property? When I married into the Dorian family, father-in-law had just gambled away their last house. The four of them nearly slept on the street. I was the one who found them a place to live. For all those years of marriage, Every penny Dorian earned went to his family. He often came to me for more money. 2. What property could he possibly have? Chapter 3. Dorian noticed my expression darken. His eyes flickered. And he looked uneasy. Yet he still held his chin high. Sister-in-law. You and my brother lived together for years. Don't worry, our Dorian family isn't unreasonable. The house on Jahanha Road will stay with you. But we're taking everything else. My brother died because of you. Once the assets are divided, let's stop seeing each other. I don't want mother upset every time she sees you. He even turned his face aside with false solemnity. My fingers clenched tightly around the fabric in my hands as I stared at Dorian's shameless face. Disgust churning in my stomach. The Jahanha Road house was the smallest under my name, barely 50 square meters and decades old. How generous of them. Just a few words, and they wanted to take everything I owned, all of it my dowry. I gritted my teeth. It's all gone, I said coldly. Every one of our houses has been sold. Don't think I don't know Dorian was secretly giving you money. He sold my dower properties just to support your family. There's nothing left, Willow, and I have nowhere to go, and you still want to take what's ours? Then I sank to the ground, crying loudly. My husband died so early. And now, before his body's even cold, his mother and brother come to rob me blind. You won't even leave a path for me and my daughter to live. My voice wasn't quiet. People nearby began turning to look, many of them neighbors from before. Dorian hadn't expected me to make a scene. He was a man who cared about appearances. Seeing everyone stare at him with disdain, he grew furious. You're talking nonsense. Our family's combined property and savings are worth tens of millions. I curled my lips in a sneer. How do you know our finances so well? Dorian froze. No matter how close to people were, no one should know another family's assets in such detail, especially when he and my husband, though brothers, were never that close. I fixed my gaze on him. You're not Dorian. How could you possibly know? No. Dorian was nothing but an outsider. He couldn't explain. His mouth opening and closing in mute frustration. I let out a cold laugh. Brother. I wanted to keep peace since we're family. But my husband's barely gone and you're already forcing me and my daughter to our deaths. You have such a cruel heart, don't blame me for fighting back. Every penny Dorian spent on your family came from our marital assets. I demanded all back along with the jewelry he secretly gave your wife. Those were my dowry. Gifts from my parents. Everyone knew Dorian used to send money to his mother's house. Neighbors even praised him for being filial. But now, hearing he'd used my jewelry for his sister-in-law, people's expressions changed. At the mention of jewelry, Leela, Medida, who had been standing aside, couldn't hold back anymore. Holding her barely showing belly, she stepped forward, chin raised. Have you lost your mind? Dorian gave those to us willingly. What right do you have to take them back? If you have the guts, go find him in the afterlife. You're a jinx who killed your husband. She hurled insult after insult. And Dorian didn't stop her, he even looked at her tenderly. When she was finally done, he patted her back and turned to me. Your sister-in-law's pregnant and moody. Try to be more understanding. We're still one family. After all. I gave a bitter smile. You're all one family. Except me, the widow, left behind. At that, Dorian looked away, guilt flickering in his eyes. Chapter 4. Mother-in-law finally lost her temper. Seeing that neither Dorian nor Leela got what they wanted, she shoved me hard. Listen to me. You can play all the tricks you want, but all the money and property belong to me. You're just a widow with a worthless brat. What do you need money for? Leela's carrying my grandson. I stumbled backward, hitting a metal lunchbox on the cot behind me. My daughter woke up from her nap, startled by the shouting. Seeing the angry crowd in front of us, she burst into tears. Heart-taking. I wrapped my arms around her protectively. The security guard on patrol frowned as he approached, next to Dorian's tall frame and his mother's broad figure. My daughter and I looked painfully small and fragile. With the commotion drawing attention, more neighbors came over. Seeing us an orphaned mother and child, they looked on with pity. I seized the moment, crying even harder, spilling every grievance from these past years, how Dorian had sold my dowry to fund his family, How my mother-in-law favored sons over daughters. The more I spoke, the more contempt grew in the crowd's eyes toward the Dorian family. Of course, I exaggerated a little, but most of what I said was true. And the most important fact? The real Dorian was already dead. With no one to contradict me, I could say whatever I wished. Compared to the aggressive Dorian clan, itty weak, grieving widow was far more convincing. By the end, in everyone's eyes, the late Dorian had become nothing but a selfish freeloader. Dorian's face turned crimson with rage. But he could only stand there and watch as I used this incident to sever ties with his family completely. That very day, I went to the company. With the expedited death certificate in hand, his legal wife sold the company to Dorian's biggest rival. The company's initial seed capital had come from my dowry. But I was no manager. And the staff were all Dorian's people. I feared he would make trouble later, better to sell and walk away with the money. Close the chapter cleanly. Money smooths things over. Even bitter enemies are wary of long disputes. They signed at once and wired the funds into my account. I took my daughter back to a villa in the city, the only post-marriage property that had been in Dorian's name. Fortunately for me, it was now mine. When I arrived, I saw my mother-in-law and Leela already living there, basking in the yard. Seeing me, my mother-in-law curled her lip. "I told you this is my son's house. Get out of here. You're not welcome," she sneered, casting a disgusted look at my daughter hiding behind me. "It's because she gave birth to that cursed brat that my son is dead. After my son died, you two should have followed him right away." My daughter cowered behind me, frightened and hurt. I had known my mother-in-law favored sons and scorned girls. She had never allowed our daughter any real contact. But as our child grew, her simple innocence made her understand right from wrong. I dared not imagine how much naked malice over the years had wounded her small heart. Anger flared in me. I put on a cold face and looked at my mother-in-law. "Are you not even sorrowful that your own son died?" I asked. After all, the husband I had thought I loved had been false. Dorian's supposed death was a lie. The son she mourned was real. At my words, the mother-in-law's eyes reddened with rage. She opened the door and lunged toward me, screaming, "You bitch. I'll tear your mouth to pieces today." Leela clutched her belly and watched the scene like it was a spectacle. But in the next moment the property security guards arrived. I pulled a red property certificate from my bag. I had anticipated that my mother-in-law wouldn't give up so easily. I would not put myself in danger for so little. Long before coming, I'd notified the property management. They answer only to the deed, not to people. And their steep fees make them efficient. Within 10 minutes, my mother-in-law's, Leela's and Dorian's belongings were bundled and thrown out. "What are you doing?" Leela screamed. She hadn't minded our quarrel, but when her things were tossed out she lost her composure. She ground her teeth and pointed at me in outrage. "Don't you know I'm pregnant? You can't do this to me. My husband will never let you get away with it." My mother-in-law's face went black. I smirked. "Don't worry. He'll be back soon." I watched Dorian some distance away, disheveled and hurrying over. I looked forward to seeing his expression when, racing back to the company, he discovered I had sold it to his sworn enemy. Chapter 5. When Dorian saw Leela and my mother-in-law being evicted, his face nearly contorted. Hate filled his eyes. He ground out through his teeth, "Serafina, you've gone mad. Darling. That bitch pushed us out. She kicked us out." Leela flung herself into Dorian's arms and sobbed, looking pitiful. Dorian's heart ached for her. I produced the title deed under his furious glare. My name shone on it. Dorian's expression faltered as realization struck. His skin went pale and he swallowed. "You not only transferred the house, you sold the company?" The villa and the company had been the fruit of Dorian's efforts. Now they were in my hands. He could scarcely believe it. "What's wrong with inheriting my husband's house and company?" I raised an eyebrow. "I don't know how to run a company. What's wrong with selling it?" Hearing that, a flicker of jealousy crossed Leela's face. Her complexion drained. "You're so ruthless. You're already doing things so utterly final while my brother-in-law's corpse is barely cold. Aren't you afraid he'll come after you in the night?" I gave a light laugh and turned my gaze toward my mother-in-law and Dorian, smiling with an inscrutable edge. "If someone's going to come looking, it won't be for me." If Silas knew that after his death his own brother had impersonated him and taken his place to care for his wife, he would have been furious enough to claw his way back from the grave. What do you mean by that? Dorian's face drained of color. Panic flashed in his eyes. I lifted mine and curled the corner of my mouth. How long could his clumsy act fool anyone? I glanced at a text on my phone and smiled. I don't know if my husband will come looking for me, but the elder brother's creditors are on their way. Dorian probably hadn't been told. Silas had borrowed a huge sum to satisfy Leela's desires. In the last life, even though Dorian survived by living as Silas himself had been erased. Debts disappear when a man dies. But now Silas stood alive and breathing right here. I was curious to see how a man who just lost everything would manage to repay those debts. A group of men in black suits approached in the distance. I took my time carrying my daughter into the villa. Who are you? This is a society ruled by law, you can't do this. Someone protested. This is monstrous. Serafina, let us in. Amid the rising cries of alarm I slowly shut the door. The debts weren't Dorian's to begin with. Even if he had them, he wouldn't pay Silas's creditors. Debt collectors are not people you can reason with. And Leela, pregnant, threatened Dorian to deal with it quickly or she would terminate the pregnancy. At the mention of that, my mother-in-law's heart failed and she was rushed to the hospital. After being driven from the villa, Dorian had nowhere to live. He could only sell his last valuable possession, a watch, for a few coins to rent a place to stay. Chapter 6. But when had Leela ever lived through hardship? Even my mother-in-law had enjoyed a pampered life since I married into the family. The sudden fall was unbearable. They complained day in and day out. Seeing all the assets fall into my hands via my phone, Dorian immediately filed a lawsuit against me. He even staged a live stream to play the victim. He and Leela, wearing shabby clothes, sat before the camera with my mother-in-law and lamented. After my son died in the earthquake, this daughter-in-law drove us out. My wife has a heart condition and won't live long. At that moment, Leela called me, her voice dripping with smug satisfaction as she saw the entire internet cursing me. Serafina, are you regretting it now? If you are, hurry up and transfer the money and the house. I'll consider sparing you and let you and your daughter stay in the house to serve me and my son. How about that? Thinking of Leela's barely showing belly, I couldn't help but sneer, making sure to record the conversation. When she saw I wasn't begging for mercy, Leela's composure quickly cracked. Her voice turned sharp and grating. Serafina, what exactly do you want? Do you want to remarry? Do you think you deserve to live after what you did to Dorian? The late Dorian? I couldn't help but laugh. Leela was even dumber than I thought. All this time, she hadn't realized that the Silas she was living with wasn't the real one. Leela couldn't stand the poor living conditions of her rented, run-down apartment, and now, seeing no way to threaten me, she switched to playing the victim. Serafina, you're a mother too. You know how hard it is for a pregnant woman. If we go to court, your mother-in-law will take Dorian's estate. Why don't you just give us the money? Even if it's a little less. We're still family, right? She put on a pitiful expression as she sent me pictures. Leela couldn't endure the hardship, but it would take months before the court hearing. On top of that, creditors were knocking on her door daily. She couldn't stand the pressure. The shabby environment she was in was indeed uncomfortable. But I remembered how, in my past life, when I had an infected wound, Leela, dressed head to toe in luxury brands, pinched her nose in disgust and urged Dorian to give up on my treatment, saying I wasn't worth wasting more money on. Dorian patiently held her, comforting her. Keeping her around makes us look kind. Just treat her like a dying dog. She won't last much longer anyway. At that, Leela reluctantly nodded. Before she left, she kicked my bed in frustration. The jolt sent a searing pain through my wound, but that pain didn't compare to the ache in my heart. I snapped a picture of the villa and sent it to Leela. Sorry, sister-in-law. There's nothing I can do. Let's just leave it to the judge. Whatever the court decides, that's how it'll be. After sending it, I blocked Leela on my phone. Sure enough, not long after, Leela went live, accusing me of being malicious. Watching the flood of insults on the stream, I felt no concern at all. I was only looking forward to the day of the trial. Chapter 7. The Dorian family started a live stream and made a lot of money, even selling products. Watching my mother-in-law cry while trying to sell stuff, I found it laughable. Every day, I watched them put on this farce. Like clowns. Of course. With money, things could be handled more easily. After making a profit from the sales, instead of paying off debts, they used connections to push the court hearing ahead. But that worked to my advantage. I didn't mind waiting. Dragging it out was actually starting to annoy me. On the day of the trial, Dorian stood with Leela, who was heavily pregnant, and his mother. They all huddled together, and a group of random people from society gathered as spectators. I looked at the scene with satisfaction. It would be even better if more people showed up. Before the hearing began, Dorian cornered me in the restroom. I hadn't seen him in a while, and life had clearly taken its toll on him. His face was hard and with bitterness as he grabbed my wrist. His voice low and threatening. "I'm giving you one last chance. If you regret it now, I'll forgive you. But if you don't, Before he could finish, I slapped him across the face. Seeing the disbelief in his eyes, I rubbed my numb hand, the rush of satisfaction flooding me. I had wanted to do that for so long, but I hadn't found the opportunity until today. "Brother," I said with a twisted smile, stressing each word. "After all, I'm your sister-in-law. Don't you think it's a bit much to treat me like this?" Dorian's face darkened. I wasn't interested in continuing this pointless back and forth, so I turned and walked away. "Serafina, even if you regret it later, it'll be too late," Dorian shouted from behind me. His teeth gritted in fury. Chapter 8. At the trial, Dorian's face was cold as he discussed the case with his lawyer. Leela's eyes glinted with satisfaction. "Serafina, you brought this on yourself. According to the law, no matter what, Dorian's assets will be split in half." I nodded and smiled, feeling pleased. "Don't rush it." I calmly handed the judge a document. The moment Dorian saw the title of the file, he lost all composure. He'd forgotten that I had inherited a vast fortune after losing my parents at a young age, and I had never felt secure. At his lowest point, he had agreed to a prenuptial agreement in order to marry me. But years had passed, and he'd completely forgotten about it. Not only did I present the prenuptial agreement, but I also handed over the financial records for all the assets under my name over the years. Thanks to Dorian's own careful preparations, this trial was being streamed live. Countless viewers were now witnessing the truth. Dorian had married me when he was penniless, living off my dowry to get where he was. He didn't just take from me, either. He had stolen my jewelry and given it to Leela, who then sold it. All of this was backed up by legal, legitimate evidence, and the truth was undeniable. In less than a moment, public opinion shifted. The comments on the stream exploded, the insults pouring in. Dorian stared at me, his face one of disbelief as if he had never known me. I had prepared for this moment for years, determined to see Dorian's reputation destroyed. Now, the label of the Phoenix Man would stick to him forever. I never understood how, after so many years of marriage, he could be so cruel. But in the end, I realized it wasn't until his death that I heard the conversation between him and his mother. He had always believed I looked down on him. He thought living off my money and staying in my house was humiliating. Well, in this life, I would make sure he stayed in the spotlight of shame. When the judge's gavel slammed down, Dorian's face went ashen. Now, the only thing Dorian had left was his pregnant wife. As for my husband, the real Dorian, I had already erased his account the moment he died. But don't worry, I still had some surprises left for him. I sent the video from my phone to a marketing account, paying to have it reposted. Soon, the entire internet would be flooded with the footage of how the Dorian family had come to pressure me after the earthquake. The Dorian family's house had collapsed, and they could no longer make money from live streaming. But the creditors were still coming every day. Dorian regretted it. With a face full of sorrow, he found me and said, "Serafina, I'm not dead." I stood behind the villa gate, raising an eyebrow. Through the iron bars, I looked at Dorian's face and felt nothing but disgust. Seeing me unmoved, Dorian shouted in disbelief. Serafina. It's me. It had a low sigh. It's Dorian. I twisted my lips into a smirk, not bothering to hide the sarcasm in my eyes. Are you out of your mind? For a moment, Dorian's face turned pale. It seemed he hadn't expected such a response from me. In his mind, I had always loved him so much that, upon learning he was Dorian, I'd be overwhelmed with joy and eager to rebuild our relationship. An idea flashed through my mind. And Dorian, with a pitiful look, hoarsely asked, "Did you know all along I wasn't your brother-in-law?" I didn't respond to his question, only smiling brightly at him. Do you blame me, Serafina? I couldn't help it. Mother forced me into it. My sister-in-law was pregnant, and Mother feared the truth would break her, so she pressured me to impersonate my brother. I thought I would explain everything to you after she gave birth, but I didn't expect so many misunderstandings to pile up. As I watched Dorian speak with such confidence, I couldn't help but laugh. This was the first time I really saw how shameless a person could be. If I hadn't heard these words myself in my previous life, I might have believed him. Are you out of your mind, big brother? Don't worry if you've really lost your sanity. I'll make sure you get the proper care in a mental hospital. Seeing the open threat in my eyes, Dorian's expression dark and with a chilling aura, he didn't doubt that I would indeed send him to a psychiatric hospital. Are you doing this out of revenge? Dorian wasn't stupid. He noticed my smile and staggered back a step. A flash of despair crossed his face. At that moment, my daughter ran out from the house but stopped in her tracks when she saw Dorian. Dorian, looking at her, seemed to regain some life in his eyes. Willow. I'm your dad. I'm your dad. As Dorian reached out his hand, my daughter took a step back, her small face devoid of any childlike warmth. In a tiny voice, she said, "Papa's already dead." Dorian didn't understand. The truth was, long before his repeated indulgence of my mother-in-law and Leela bullying me and my daughter, he had already died in her heart. Dorian was struck as if by lightning, utterly broken and despairing. I'm Dorian. I'm not Silas. I'll call the police. I'll prove I'm myself. Mom can vouch for me. Before Dorian could call the police, I had already done it for him. Dorian's eyes were red, and he gasped for breath. Serafina, you wicked woman. I'm divorcing you. I raised an eyebrow and glanced at the arriving police officers. Officers, please take a look at him. He's my husband's twin brother. He's in debt and trying to escape by pretending to be my husband. Isn't that crazy? I pulled out Dorian's death certificate and proof of his debts. On my side, I had all the documentation. Dorian had only his and his mother-in-law's words. It was clear who was in the wrong. The police officer sternly addressed Dorian. Impersonating someone else is illegal. You must obey the law. Dorian looked as though he might faint from the shock. But unfortunately for him, after the police left, the creditors arrived. Dorian's face had long since soured, and he was now like a rat scurrying through the streets, hated by everyone. No one would hire him for a proper job, so he had to do manual labor. But the pay was so low he couldn't support a sick mother and pregnant Leela. Leela, demanding delicacies like bird's nest and abalone, found Dorian's situation unacceptable. He could barely maintain their basic living expenses. How could he keep going? His downfall had been caused by Leela. For the woman he once loved, Dorian now had no feelings left. Had it not been for Leela's pregnancy, his mother-in-law's long-desired grandson, he might have already snapped. Unfortunately, having fulfilled Lee, after one last argument where Leela demanded money from him and got nothing, they tangled on the stairs. In the confusion, Leela, 8 months pregnant, was pushed down the narrow staircase by Dorian. Leela fell, half paralyzed, and lost the baby, the grandson his mother-in-law had always wanted. When my mother-in-law heard the news, her heart failed on the spot, and she collapsed, only to wake up paralyzed. Dorian was arrested and taken to the police station. I heard that my mother-in-law's body was found rotting in a rented room, covered in maggots. When Dorian heard this, he committed suicide in prison. Years later, I watched my daughter become brighter and more cheerful. and my heart swelled with gratitude to the heavens. The end.